Welcome to the podcast where we discuss all about Bethlehem and its future. I'm your host, Ryan Conrad. We're diving into the stories, ideas, and people that make our community shine. So let's talk Bethlehem. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Let's Talk Bethlehem. I have on a special guest today, Robert Duncan.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. We're going to cover a little bit about leadership and Boy Scouts and Appalachian Trail and hiking and education.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah.
I have to let the cat out of the bag.
Okay,
I live in Taylorsville, not Bethlehem.
Yes.
But I do my scouting in Bethlehem.
That's right, yep.
So I've been a scout leader here for almost 10 years now.
Yep, we're going to cover that for sure. So you became an Eagle Scout at just 14, which is just an incredible achievement. What motivated you to push yourself at such a young age?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I had some really good friends that came up in the troop with me. One of them, some of the audience members will remember Dr. Tukil that was here. It was his eldest son who has moved away to Florida now. But, Oof and I were very competitive. And we were leapfrogging each other to see who could get there the fastest, and still learn. There's a lot of folks that say, "Well, you're 14 years old, you don't have enough experience, you don't really know enough to be an Eagle." But we both, I feel like, learned the material really well, and of course, we stayed active in the program until we were in college. So there was lots of giving back and lots of opportunity to practice the skills that we learned and share our knowledge with others.
Yeah, that's awesome, and you always got to love a good old-fashioned competition moving through.
Yeah,
that's always a good motivator.
It's interesting because as quick as I have two sons that'll come up in a minute. But my eldest son, Gavin, earned his Eagle. You have to finish the requirements before you turn 18, and he finished his last merit badge on a Monday night, finished his Eagle Service Project on Wednesday, and he turned 18 on Saturday.
Wow.
And, my younger son is kind of in the same spot. He'll be 18 in about 10 days, and we finished his project yesterday. So we're right up to that line. So
yeah.
They didn't learn that part from me, but they've had a good ride with it.
That's awesome. So Scouting's National Honor Society, the Order of the Arrow, recognizes those who go above and beyond in service. What has being a part of that meant to you? Well,
it's also an organization that I was elected into when I was young, as a scout, and we call it Scouting's Camping Honor Society. We are kind of stewards of the camp. We try to promote camping in our council, specifically at our scout camp, but leadership is also a large part and service to the camp. So that was a place that I could be with other youth from around our 11 county council, not just the scouts that were in my small troop in Taylorsville, or even our district with Alexander and Caldwell counties. You're working with folks from Gastonia northward, Iredell County, coming up the way there, and you develop those friendships in that setting. And it gives you a place that you can continue those scouting ideals and give back at the same time. So it was a very important part of my scouting as a youth, and it's been an honor to be back involved with both my children with it.
Yeah, I'm sure that is awesome to something that you were so passionate about and still passionate about, and then to see your kids follow those same footsteps is really cool. So that's awesome. You've dedicated a huge part of your life to scouting, from staffing, leadership, training, to now being a camp director at Camp Bud Schiele. And what keeps you so passionate about it, like even today?
Well, I think I owe scouting an awful lot for the leaders and people that I knew as a youngster for molding me into the person that I've become. I've lived a very comfortable life. I've been, successful in my career. I had opportunities when I went to school for some scholarships, and a lot of that I think was because of the citizenship and leadership skills and the service that I did when I was coming through scouting as a youth. So it's important for me to give back to that program and to make that program something that today's youth can take advantage of, and that they can get some of the same head starts on life that I did.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. For someone who's unfamiliar with scouting, what are your biggest life lessons it teaches young people today?
Well, so the mission of Scouting America is to prepare young people to make ethical and moral decisions over the course of their lifetime by instilling in them the values in the Scout Oath and the Scout Law. I may have had to memorize that for some training that I did fairly recently, but at any rate, that's our mission statement. So among the tenets of the Scout Oath and the Scout Law, there's three things. We make the Scout sign with three fingers, and that reminds us of our duty to God and country, duty to other people, and duty to self. And we recite the Scout Law, which is, Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. And I think those are values that are important to all young people. I didn't even think to mention it, but I was thinking when I read over your questions the other day, I've had to defend or at least answer the question, why are there females in Boy Scouts? Mm-hmm. Well, we actually rebranded twice since then. We were Scouts BSA and we're now Scouting America. And, folks would say, well, girls don't belong there. So, well, yeah, they, aren't these values good, positive values that we want anyone to have? Mm-hmm. And why would we not want to teach that to a larger audience? We double our potential client base, if you will, by opening it up. And those are values that I espouse are important for everyone.
Yeah. I'm with you. So let's talk a little bit about education in your teaching career.
Alrighty.
You spent nearly 3 decades as a math teacher at Alexander Central. I've seen you up and down the halls. I never had you as a teacher.
Right. We were trying to decide. I couldn't remember. I know you played soccer for my friend.
Yeah.
And I remember when you were at the high school.
Yeah. And I've heard all of my closest friends had you as a teacher and had nothing but just the best things to say about your classes and teaching and your method. So I can, not directly, but sort of from another person, I can vouch to say that there's nothing but wonderful things to say about you as a teacher.
Thank you.
But nevertheless, even serving as math department chair for most of that time, what kept you in the classroom for so long? Well,
I enjoyed it. Obviously I enjoy working with young people, which I'm still doing through scouting, and that's important to me. It helps me to feel young. The snarky answer is, well, after so long, you're so vested in the system, you can't leave the job. Yeah. All your retirement's tied up there. But I enjoyed it. I had never really intended to leave teaching when I did. I taught for 29 years, and our principal came in May of 2018 and said, I'm not coming back next year. And I went straight home and I looked in the computer and realized, I've got 29 years and 1 year and 2/3 of sick leave built up. And there were several things building in my life, some directions that I wanted to explore, and it lined up like dominoes as being the right time to step away, or I would still be there. My wife's still teaching. Though I'm a little bit older than she is, I'm not sure I would have stayed around to wait on her to retire, but I had no real plans to retire when I did. It was something I enjoyed doing every day. I mean, there's very few days I look back and think, well, man, this was terrible. I enjoyed what I do. And we were talking beforehand, and I miss being in the classroom. Now, I will say I don't at all miss having somewhere to be every day at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
But, I miss being around the den of the school and the all the activities and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and, this isn't on the script, but, I can just say that you can always tell when someone really enjoys what they do in whatever it is. I mean, it could be oil drilling for all I care. And if you really enjoy what you're doing, it really rubs off on other people.
Yeah,
and they know
important.
that, and they have better experiences because of that. Even if I just meet somebody for a half second in the cash register.
Right.
I mean, whatever
and I've told my children this, whatever you choose, you don't need to make all the money in the world.
No.
Everybody knows I didn't get rich being a math teacher. But, I've always said I've had my needs met, taken care of, and a lot of my wants have been taken care of. But at the end of the day, I was happy with doing what I was doing. I felt it was a calling. I felt it was a gift, a blessing, and it just was the right thing for me to do. And I loved it.
Yep. And what better to lead into this next thing is to say you were named Alexander Central's Teacher of the Year in 2016. What do you think made you stand out as an educator?
I don't know. I was trying to think about that. I assume, I have always had strong leadership skills, and I think that goes back to my scouting background. So I have always been a leader in the school while I was there. We have a group of teachers that are called the leadership team, or it was at that point. So I was annually elected to be on that. And I think I just had the respect of the other teachers and the students as well. And they just saw fit to honor me with that, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe they voted me because they didn't want to have to do all the paperwork that you have to do to try to advance to another level. Yeah. But it was an honor, and I was blessed to be honored that way.
Yeah. It correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'm right here. You helped, or at least did a little bit of teaching with GIS systems.
Eric Walker did that.
He did that?
Yeah,
okay.
He did. I knew about the program, but Eric had more to do with that.
Okay. I guess I'm mixing them up from, it's been...
Yeah, it's been a few years.
quite a while since then, but yeah.
Yeah.
So you taught part-time at CVCC for 15 years. What was the biggest difference in teaching high school versus college students?
Well, with the students, obviously there's several years of maturity. Teaching in the evenings as I did, my classes were usually 5 until 8:30 or something like that. So I was working with older students for sure. They were not, your typical 18-year-old college freshman taking calculus.
Right.
A lot of them, I did have some of those, but a lot of them were 20-something, 30-something, 40, 50.
Just folks maybe changing careers.
Or
maybe they got laid off and they're trying to get their college degree.
One guy that I worked with for 2 or 3 semesters through a calculus sequence was going back to get an accounting degree, so he had to have that math background, but he was my age. So, at the time, I guess we were in our 30s or early 40s.
Yeah.
So, the maturity level is different. With the community college, the job itself was different because, at least as a part-time instructor, I would show up at 4:30 and have a little bit of half an hour of office time. At 5 o'clock, I'd open the book and teach, and at 8:20 or 8 whatever, close the book, and I'm out the door. And I don't have any other responsibilities. So that was kind of nice.
Yeah.
And it was just a really interesting, good part-time job for me that I wasn't even looking for. It kind of fell into my lap.
Yeah.
When I started out, but I enjoyed it and kept doing it till the boys got old enough to where I needed to be freer in the evenings.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. Math can be a tough subject for a lot of students. What was your approach to making it more engaging and accessible?
Well, I think I have an interesting or a good way of explaining things. I try to be very patient. I've had several people to remark, especially after scout meetings when I've been working with some of our younger scouts that are, 7:30, 8 o'clock, they're done, they're zinging off the walls, but I, still try to corral them and work with them in some way. And so that patience is a useful skill to have. I try to explain things as thoroughly as possible. It's not about getting the answer at the bottom of the page. I need you to understand all this stuff that's going on at the top of the page so that when the next problem comes around and the numbers are different, you still recognize this as being that kind of problem and, oh, yeah, I know how to do that. Yeah. So, I try to break it down and backtrack to a point where they may have a misunderstanding and then bring them forward from there.
Yeah.
People look at a math teacher and say, you must be so smart. Well, no, it's just this is my skill set.
Yeah.
You do this. That takes a lot of smarts too. This just happens to be my skill set. And I think I have a way of explaining it and diagnosing, where I need to pick up with a student in order to move him or her forward.
Yeah. And I can be a testament to someone who just was not born to be the math guy.
Yeah.
My Aunt Jeannie Holler is probably going to whip me for saying this. She's
Jeannie and I were in grad school together.
Yeah, I remember.
I've known
that, yeah.
Wayne and Jeannie. Wayne and I were in Scouts together back when I was 13, 14 years old.
Yeah, she's got a doctorate in math, taught at LR.
Yep.
She's now and has been for a long time teaching at Caldwell Community and Technical Institute. But yeah, I have always struggled with math, and I see my kid, I'm like, God, I really hope he's going to be math oriented.
Well, maybe they'll get the math, but they'll get the music background and the arts background too. I mean, to have that well-rounded, that's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, I've always struggled. But I will say that the one subject of math that I actually did well at and enjoyed was geometry. I don't know if it has something related to creativity, but
in a way, yeah.
That was the one that I did excel at, and it clicked with me.
And that's where I had my aha moment, because I was miserable as an algebra student in the 9th grade. Then when I got to the high school in the 10th grade and took geometry, everything just clicked and it made perfect sense. And, I was blessed to have some good teachers after that kind of beat me into submission to do my homework and show my work and do all these things. And that made me a pretty good student. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to another really impressive accolade, exciting talk, the Appalachian Trail adventure.
Yep.
For those that aren't familiar, the Appalachian Trail starts in Georgia.
Springer Mountain.
And it ends?
At Mount Katahdin in Maine, in Baxter State Park.
Okay, and what's the distance there?
This past year, it fluctuates every year because of reroutes and things like hurricanes that decimate the trail. But this past season, 2,197.4 miles.
There you have it.
People usually say 2,200 miles, and it's within 5 miles of that, give or take.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is no small feat.
Yep.
It takes a long commitment and planning and all those things. So you and your son, Gavin, took on the Appalachian Trail in 2019, making it an incredible 1,250 miles from Georgia to New Jersey.
Yep.
Before I want to ask you what inspired that journey, but first I want to give you a little bit of context about me. My mom started following you really, really early on when you made those videos and was watching. She was like, "Have you seen Rob? Have you watched his videos? He covers it every chance he gets, he'll do a video. It's so cool. It's inspiring."
And she was an inspiration to me because she would comment on every video and reached out a couple times.
And I was like, I haven't, but I'd caught you later in your journey, and then kind of went back and watched some. But just super impressive that you vlogged basically the whole thing.
Yep.
And those out there, like a video log or a blog as a video log, and it's just covering a video. So super impressive. But what inspired that journey? How did this start?
We go back to the top of the page there. Your very first question was about me being an Eagle Scout. And one of the things that you do when you're finishing up and you're submitting all your paperwork is they ask you to write a statement of life goals and ambitions. And even as a young person, I had been on some backpacking trips when I was young with the Scout Troop. I had listed on one of those goals for life is I'd like to hike the Appalachian Trail at some point from Georgia to Maine. I'm not sure what my 13 and a half or 14-year-old brain was thinking at the time, but I knew that I enjoyed being in the outdoors, that even at that age, and enjoyed backpacking. Now, was I ready to take a gap year and do it right out of college? I didn't backpack after I did the Scouts for a while. Really, I got into it as an adult again about the time that Gavin was bridging from Cub Scouts to Boy Scouts. So when he was 10 or 11 years old, my church and the Presbyterian church there in town, the two pastors there were both avid outdoorsmen, and they got together and said, "Hey, we should take our congregants on a trip." So they planned a backpacking trip, which I had seen in the bulletin. Yeah, okay, whatever. Beth saw it, my wife, and she said, "That might be fun." And I said, "Well, yeah, I used to do this kind of thing. But it's going to be kind of expensive because we don't have any gear." And, I knew that I was going to be amassing a lot of the same gear just to continue on in scouting with Gavin and Griffin later on. But, we went on that combined trip with First United Methodist and Taylorsville Presbyterian, and that kind of reignited the spark. And that's what got me to thinking again of the possibility of doing a through hike at some point when I retired.
Yeah. Such an inspiration. Homeschooling, you homeschooled Gavin for a year.
Right after I retired.
And, just to prepare for this trip so he could be able to go with you, which is just super admirable to take your son with you. What a goal. I mean, just so impressive. So how did that? So full circle, you've taught high school, you've taught college, and now teaching your own son homeschooling. How does this one compare to the others?
So I tell people that was the most difficult year of teaching in my teaching career. at all levels. So Gavin is a unique learner. I homeschooled him so that we could skip school for the second half of the school year, with the intent of being back to hike in August, or to get him back in school in August. So we wanted to try to do things accelerated. We want to hit the basics and not have him to be behind any. But he has ADHD, so he struggles with attention. And a few other learning differences that make learning different for him than it does for us. So there were a lot of days that he would get up and I just don't feel like doing anything today. So Dad, I said, well, we really need to, but sometimes there's no point in pushing the rope. So it was a struggle. He and I laugh about it now. I don't think it cost him in his education at all. I mean, he's still very successful, but it was hard just because it was a one-on-one situation. And, the two of us are so close that to have to knock heads and try to get him to do something, if it's somebody else's child, you're going to work as hard as you can and try to make those parent contacts and say, hey, look, he's not pulling his end of the bargain here. When it's your own child, you got nobody to call. Yeah. So it was tough, but we got through it, and it was good. He had. I don't think I mentioned this. He had been in a wilderness program when he was in elementary school for a little while, and that was kind of where he got introduced into backpacking. So that was kind of a good introduction for him to be in that program for, I think it was about 9 weeks that he was there, and it helped him to work through some of his difficulties with the ADHD and all that sort of thing, but it also set him up with a skill for life, or a hobby for life. Yeah, no doubt. And I feel your pain on just knocking heads because, I mean, I think of life experiences not from homeschooling, but just father-son or even like mother-son relationship when it comes to music. Right. My mom wanted to teach me how to play sheet music. Right. And I did okay, but I always found myself being like, I don't want to do that. I'll just remember it, and then I'll do it with my own fingers that I want to use my own fingers. Right. And I just found my own way to play music. Yeah. And we knocked heads a lot trying to do that. And then Mom just realized he's just like his dad. Yeah. And Dad's a self-taught musician. Yeah. He plays keyboard, never read to my knowledge, never read a line of music. Right. And taught himself, and he played live music for 40 some years, and still plays. So Paul McCartney made a pretty good go of not reading music. Yeah. I mean, and so it's just to say that everybody learns in a different way. It's different, yeah. Not only is it an odd experience for, even if my dad were to try to teach me how to play by heart, I'd be like, I'm still going to find my own way to do it. So like that's kind of how we butt heads a little bit. And everybody has their own method, but I totally understand the frustration of trying to work with your own. No, we've hiked together twice now, and we do great together. We get along famously, but that 1 year of trying to be the teacher and the authority figure, it was tough. Yeah, way different than anything else that I had ever done. Yeah, for sure. So you recently completed the entire 2,197 mile Appalachian Trail in 2024. Right. The question is, what was the most challenging part of the journey? But before you answer that, I watched your last one. Oh yeah. And I could tell that it was super emotional for you. That we cried for the last half mile. Yeah. When you hike Katahdin. Katahdin is, without question, the most difficult climb on the entire trail. Man, that's to do all that hiking. You're walking 2,180 miles or 90 miles or whatever, and the last 5 miles are straight up over rock faces with rock climbing, and you've got some places where there's rebar pounded in to give you a foothold to get up to the next place. There's a lot of places where there should be rebar pounded in to give you another foothold. Yeah. But you reach a section called the Tablelands at Thoreau Springs, where you've done all the hard stuff, and it kind of flattens out for a little bit, and then it goes on up to the summit. And when we reached the Tablelands, the fog kind of broke, and we could see there's a big A-frame sign there at the top that says Katahdin, northern terminus of the Appalachian Trail. We could see the sign, and even now, it just, as soon as we saw that sign, we were just in tears the whole rest of the way because we were just so happy to be finished, proud of ourselves for having stuck to it, after 2 attempts.
Yeah.
And having made the whole journey together. It just was such a blessing.
Yeah.
And it was a very emotional time.
Yeah. I mean, as I imagine, for most people to accomplish something that incredible and walk for that long and finally get to the end, you feel so elated to be at the end, but to have accomplished something so big.
Yeah.
I've got so many questions beyond like what I've written down here, but one of them is like, so when you reach the end, did you guys just turn around and start walking back? Did you have a pickup or a shuttle, or did you fly back? How did you?
So Beth and my younger son Griffin and his girlfriend, my sister-in-law and her family, they flew into Maine. They flew into Bangor, and they met us there. So at Katahdin, you're up on the top of the mountain, and you have to go back down, and it was just as hard coming down as it was going up. There's multiple routes. The Appalachian Trail, we had to go up that trail called the Hunt Trail, which is the one marked with the white blazes that is the AT. But there's 2 or 3 other ways you can come down, and each of them is equally as difficult as the way up. So we had about a 4-mile hike back down to a parking area once we were there, and of course Sally and Beth and all the family were there, and we stayed in Maine for a couple of nights, I think, just to kind of see the area. What time of year
did y'all?
So we started February the 4th. And we ended up on August the 16th.
Oh, okay. So
it was about 6.5 months.
Yeah, you don't want to land in Maine in the middle of the winter.
No. And you don't want to be hiking. They actually close Katahdin usually around October the 15th because it's the second tallest mountain, I think, on the trail. Okay. And of course, being as far north as it is, it just gets hammered with snow. So, it becomes very dangerous, and they close.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, you don't want to be up there in the wintertime.
Yeah. Another question that I have is about food.
Okay.
How does that? Do you stop at a trail and then you can kind of get off the trail to like some local things?
There's a lot of ways. People don't realize, when you say you're hiking the Appalachian Trail, most people say, well, so you're packing food and you're just never seeing anybody or any roads. The AT, of the 3 long trails in North America, there's the Appalachian Trail here on the East Coast. The West Coast has the Pacific Crest Trail that starts in Mexico, goes up through California, Washington, that area, and ends in Canada. And then the Continental Divide Trail starts in Mexico and goes over the Rockies up through Idaho and that area. Of the 3, the AT is far more populated. Obviously, the East Coast is the population-dense part of our country. So you're going to cross roads several a day.
Yeah.
Some of the roads that you're going to cross will be actually roads that have cars on them, or you'll go through or nearby towns. Of course, there's a Dollar General everywhere. You can't, throw a rock without hitting a Dollar General. So when you usually try to pack out for 3 or 4 days or 5. Just you look at your maps and your guide, and look and see, well, where's the next place that it's going to be easy to get off the trail, to do a resupply, to stay indoors for a night and get a shower, do some laundry, that sort of thing. And, either you're going to be close enough that you could hitchhike. Probably, I'd try to not hitchhike because there's Uber now. You can do Uber. There's shuttle drivers that know where the trail stops are. And we have phone numbers in our guidebooks that'll, we can call somebody and get a pickup and ride a few miles into town. There's lots of hostels. There's lots of hotels in the towns that are near the AT. So it's not at all difficult for the most part to get off the trail every 3 or 4 days and be indoors and be human for a day. Yeah. And edit videos and try to find enough Wi-Fi that you can upload videos. Yeah. If that happens to be your thing.
Right. Yeah, that's cool and good to know, because I've always wondered about that, like that whole trip. Surely you don't just like go into untapped wilderness the entire time.
No. There are some places. The Smokies, if Newfound Gap is closed, Newfound Gap is the road that runs from Cherokee over through the Great Smoky Mountains near Gatlinburg. And we were actually worried because we had planned to get off at Newfound Gap. We had 3 or 4 days hiking south of that in the Smokies. And in the Smokies, there are none of these roads that you're going to cross. You're in the Smokies and you're in the wilderness. So, you either have to plan to carry 5 or 7 days worth of food to go all the way through, or you plan to get off at Newfound Gap. Well, I had a buddy that was going to come visit us at Newfound Gap, so we packed out 3 days worth of food. Well, it snowed.
Oh, Lord.
And, this road that I thought never closed, I get a message from Mitch the day or so before we were supposed to meet him, and he says, the road's closed, it's snowing. I said, oh, well, we're in a world of hurt right now because we're going to be out of food when we get there. Fortunately, we hiked in, I think it was 10:30 in the morning, and there were plows in the parking lot at Newfound Gap. Talked to those guys. They said, yeah, the road's going to be up and around 11. So he was able to come rescue us, and we spent a couple of days in Gatlinburg, so that was nice.
Oh, cool.
So the Smokies is one area. In Maine, there's the 100-mile wilderness, where it sounds like you enter the 100-mile wilderness. There's a sign that says you must have at least 10 days worth of food. Well, the through hiker can do that in 5 days, so that's already wrong.
So what's a through hiker? Just
through hikes means just start to finish.
Just start to finish.
Hiking
okay.
the entire trail in one calendar year.
I gotcha.
So it sounds like you're really in the wilderness, and you are. But even in that area, there's places where you can arrange with a hostel to drop you some food at a road crossing. Even though there may not be traffic that you can't hitchhike out of there, you can arrange for food to be in the wilderness for you if you need it.
Did you guys ever get lost?
Not too badly. It's really hard because the trail is really well marked. It's well trodden, so even without the white blazes painted on the trees, except in rocky spots, you can obviously see where the path goes. And we have electronic guides. With this day and age, everybody's got a GPS of everything. And, there's a guide called Far Out, which you download sections of the trail about 200 miles or so at a time. And it'll put a dot on the map. It'll show you every kind of waypoint, whether it's a shelter, a tent site, water source, road crossing, hostels, all those sort of things, anything that you need to know about. And when you're on the trail, you see your blue dot. If you tap on that dot in front of you that's for the water source, it'll tell you that's 3.1 miles ahead of you. And obviously your dot's on a map moving. So if you don't see a white place for a little while, you can stop and pull out your phone and say, oh, yeah, I should have taken a left at Albuquerque.
Yeah.
And you can, which way to go to get back on the trail too. So
that's
it's hard to get lost. It happens.
Technology helps too.
Yeah.
And those maps are loaded offline on your phone.
Definitely.
You don't have to rely on any sort of signal. Right. You're just using the GPS on your phone.
Yeah, and the GPS will work anywhere.
Yep. That's cool. Did you feel like it changed you a little bit?
Yeah, and it's interesting, having done 2/3 of the trail before, and then coming back and doing it 5 years later and doing that whole part again, because we wanted to start over. We wanted to be through hikers. We wanted to hike the entire thing in the year.
Yeah.
There were places where I would get up and think, well, I've seen this all before, and we're just getting up and we're going to walk 16 miles today, or we're going to walk 18 miles today. And it gets monotonous after a while, but it gave me a renewed sense of the confidence that I have in myself, and to know that if I set my mind to doing something, that I can do it. Because I may have ADHD too. I don't know. I tend to be scattered.
Yeah.
My mom and dad used to say, well, you get involved in a hobby, and as soon as you figure that hobby out, then you're going to drop it and you're going to go to the next best thing. But to know that I could set my mind to this goal and stick with this to see it to fruition was, that made me feel good about myself. And it made me, I was just so proud of Gavin for sticking with it. I was very worried, honestly, that he would have some kind of an issue or whatever, and especially when he was 13. When we hiked in 2019, he was only 13. He turned 14 in Tennessee. I just wasn't sure whether he would have that mental stamina to stick with it from the psychological point. The physical is hard too, but there's as much or more psychology involved in sticking with something like that for 6 months.
Yeah.
But I was really proud of him and me for being able to get all the way through.
So I've got one more off the cuff question for you, because I'm really curious. I watch tons of YouTube videos of people camping at night and weird things happening. I'm just dying to know, and it may be the answer is none, but
4.
What is the strangest thing that happened on your journey?
I thought you were going to ask about bear sightings.
Oh, well, I'm sure you saw a lot of bears.
Yeah, saw some bears. So,
was there anything where you're like, this is a little sketchy?
Well, so in 2019, there was actually a murder on the trail. People. I have a good friend at home that when we were heading out in 2019, Robert, you going to take a gun? I'm an auctioneer. I can get you a gun. I said, no, Ted, I'm not going to take a gun. First of all, I don't do guns, but I wasn't going to carry the weight in my pack.
Yeah.
Anyway, but when you do the research, the trail is probably the safest place in the world you could be. But that doesn't keep somebody that's mentally disturbed from getting out there and having an issue. And that happened in 2019. It happened actually just a day behind us. So we were at a motor lodge in Southern Virginia. I'm trying to Walter, Big Walter. I think you can see it from 77 near Bland, Virginia. We had gotten into that hotel that night, and the next morning the place is full. They had emptied the trail into that hotel that night to work the crime scene. So that obviously was very sketchy. Now, does that happen every year? No, it doesn't. I read a book while I was on trail. I listened to it, but my wife, the English teacher, says that counts as reading the book. It was about murders along the AT, and there's not been many. The trail's been around for 100 years. And there's maybe 6 or 8, I think. So it's a very safe place to be. And the cool thing about it, too, is there's such the parrot head in me says coconut telegraph, but, there's such a word of mouth up and down the trail that if there is something sketchy like that going on, if there's somebody that you might need to be watchful for, you're going to know about it a week in advance.
Yeah.
You're going to know, the word will travel. Even though there's no cell reception in a lot of places. Yeah, you'll find out about it.
The community's really connected.
Really tight. Yeah, very connected. Very connected. So that was the sketchiest thing.
Okay.
We saw lots of cool things. Like I said, we saw bears. The neatest thing to me is when you're going through some of the protected areas, the deer are not hunted. And, you can get from here to the door and just stop and sit there and stare at each other and they don't care. They know that they're not in danger, that I'm not a threat to them, and I think it's kind of cool to be able to sit here and watch one of God's creatures that close up. Yeah,
that is really cool.
Of course, all my hunting in-laws, I took the first time that happened, I took pictures and said, hey, wouldn't you like to be here right now?
Yeah.
Never mind climbing in the tree stand at 4 o'clock in the morning and freezing things off.
Yeah, you just walk right up next to them.
Yeah, just walking out, yeah. So that was kind of neat.
Yeah,
that's good people. People are, a positive thing. So, and this also happened in 2019, but it happens all the time. When you're out, because of the possibility of wildlife, bears in particular, you hang your food at night away from the campsite. So you need to get it up in the tree. And we were at a shelter in Virginia, and 2 people lost their food hangs to bears. Not sure. One of them, we thought it was a good hang. One of them was on a little flimsy tree that I could have bent over and grabbed it. So that's on her. But the guy that we were hiking with had a pretty good hang. It was definitely up and out as far as it should be. Don't know how it happened, but I wake up to yelling and screaming at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning when this guy's yelling at this bear to get out of the campsite. Yeah. So we're all getting up in the morning, and there were probably 15 or 20 of us in that campsite that night. And, to the person, everybody's dumping their food bag out on the table. Wow. What do you need? I've got this extra. You can take that. And he's going to offer you this. And, we basically resupplied those 2 people with enough food to get them into the next town. What a cool story. And that's the trail life. I mean, people look out for each other. Yeah. Yeah. What a cool story. Yeah. I mean, you got to take care of your, people, especially when you're out there. You don't realize it, but even though you're not too far away from the next thing, you're a little more vulnerable out there than you would be just out in a car, going somewhere. So I got one last question, and we can move on. This is a funny random question. All right. Did you see Sasquatch? No, I missed him. Okay. Leave no trace expert.
And didn't have any signs, didn't hear anything?
Didn't see any
mess
Sasquatch.
With you, throw any rocks or anything? Yeah, okay.
No. Definitely he's the king of leave no trace. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about leadership and giving back. Okay. Between teaching, scouting, and church leadership.
service has been a huge theme in your life. What drives you to give back there?
Well, I think I've mentioned before that I feel like I owe scouting a lot for making me the person that I am. It gave me those skills. It taught me those skills. Even in college, I was in a service fraternity with your aunt and uncle. And the principles of Alpha Phi Omega are leadership, friendship, and service. And those have just always been things that I aspire to. And I guess it's just because those were the things that were presented to me as important ideals when I was a young person. And I've tried to continue doing those things in my day-to-day life. I look for opportunities that I can be helpful to other people.
Yeah.
That's the Scout motto is do a good turn daily.
Yeah.
Or the Scout slogan rather. I look for ways to be helpful to others, and it makes me feel good that I'm able to do nice things for other people, that I'm in a position that I can do that. But especially in the scouting program, I've been around it for a long time, and I'm active not just in my unit, but also around our council now, and have been for several years. I'm a fairly well-known person, not trying to brag, but it's just, I'm reaching out and doing things at the council level. So I've made a lot of contacts and a lot of friends of other people who are doing the same things that I'm doing, making the program better for our young people. And
you'll notice there seems to not always, but there is usually a common pattern so far in the folks that I've brought in to talk. And the one common denominator is they all are just heavily involved in their community and organizations, and they really just give back a lot of their time and effort into their town, community.
Sure.
So that's been the common denominator of just about every person that's come in. And so, it's very admirable.
Well,
and
thank you.
It's always there's always great things to talk about and positive things to cover. So it's my understanding you have a new role.
I do.
You're a 2025 lay leader for the First United Methodist Church in Taylorsville. Actually, a church that my mom goes to.
Yep.
Church that I went to as a teenager.
Right.
So I'm thinking, what are some of your goals for this new venture?
Well, I'll be honest. I'm just stepping into that role as a first of the year. So I'm still trying to ask questions about responsibilities and that sort of thing. But it's a position where I'm sort of a liaison between the congregation and the pastor. So, obviously, Joel and I, our pastor, we need to sit down and share a meal, with great frequency just to chat and talk about how things are going. He'll bounce ideas off of me. If I've heard things from the congregation, I can pass those forward and that sort of thing. So, that's what I think the role is, and I think I'll be good at it.
So basically, like you're just getting like a pulse check from
I think so. I think that's the idea, is just to have someone from the congregation that can meet with the pastor and just
represent
ideas.
all their voices and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, and if something does come up, I would assume that there's a chain of command that if somebody has an issue, well, they tell me, and then I talk to Joel about it. The folks that I talked to recently that have been past lay leaders, it doesn't sound like that comes up very often. But you just kind of you hear things, and if there's concerns, you can raise those.
Okay.
So I keep my ears open and do what I can.
Yeah. Well, good luck on that going
Thank
forward.
you.
It sounds like something interesting.
It's not something that I aspired to. I was rather surprised that I was asked to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm also honored that I was asked to do it.
Very cool. Well, I've got just a couple fun closing questions, and we can wrap it up.
Absolutely.
After so many years in education, do you ever find yourself randomly solving math problems just for fun?
So interesting. My son, Griffin, my younger son, is a senior this year. And as luck would have it, he's planning to go to school and study to become a math teacher. And
Very cool.
And he was selected to be in governor's school last year. Governor's school is a 5-week residential program for gifted students in North Carolina. There's 2 college campuses that they use. And he went to governor's school this summer in math. So he was working with college math instructors, learning about the things that he will be learning about. Now, obviously, he wasn't going through an entire course of differential equations, but they kind of introduced them to these ideas and skills and in as approachable way as a student can come to it without having a lot of prerequisite knowledge. And it was really neat talking with him that, the times that I was able to get on top of a mountain and have enough service that we could call and talk. And he was explaining to me all these really cool things that I have long since forgotten from back in the 80s that he was learning about. And he's, seeing that excitement in him. And when I retired, I actually did get out a college textbook and started trying to work through it. And that kind of went away, but I could see myself doing that.
And I'm going to connect a little bit of knowing that you're math-minded and you're hiking. I'm going to try to get in your shoes for a second and think, all right, so I know that I walk an average of 3 miles, maybe 2 or 3 miles an hour, and I've got 4 more miles to go. Are you ever running that math in your head to calculate how long it's going to take?
I know, especially when you're calling ahead. If you're going to get a shuttle ride, you may have to call them from the top of that mountain back there because you wouldn't have service otherwise. So you're going to have to figure out. Well, I've got 12 miles to go today, and I know how far I hike or how fast I hike, and that's a constant, all the time thing.
But then when it gets you want to get real fancy, you're going to have variables like hills and stuff that might slow you down. So
there's actually a rule, and I can't remember the name of it, but I looked it up trying to think about how we could plan a scout hike, because a lot of my backpacking has just been me and Gavin, and we're both fairly good hikers, and we're in shape, and Round does a shape. We were in shape, but we still hike fast. But my scouts won't be able to go that far. And there's they say that you average 3 miles an hour, but then there is you add a half an hour or an hour for every 1,000 feet of elevation gain or loss, or something like that. There's formulaic kinds of things that can kind of help you to discern how long it's going to take you to get there.
Yeah, that's cool. So you've hiked thousands of miles. Do you ever just have the urge to walk everywhere now?
Not everywhere, and my wife's been on me because I do need to get out. And I've ahead of the hike, actually a couple of years ahead of the hike, I knew I needed to lose some weight. So I have a lap around town that I would try to do several times a week, and I lost 25 pounds, that was my goal.
Just walking or jogging?
No, walking.
Walking.
I hate running.
Yeah, me too.
Beth runs on the treadmill. She used to do 5Ks and has even done a half, but I'm not a runner.
And you were walking how far?
Just around town, 4 miles.
4 miles?
Yeah, I've got a loop there pretty much around the perimeter of town.
That's cool.
So I've got to get back to doing that. I have said for years, I really wish that they would pave down Highway 90 towards the golf course, because there's a lot of foot traffic from Polk Street, and I live on Airport Road. So, that it's a mile or less for me to walk to the grocery store, and I go to the grocery store every day. I would love to walk that, but I just don't feel safe walking on the highway there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I need to and plan to, continue to get out and do some hiking and that sort of thing. Not long distance.
Yeah.
But, just to try to stay in better shape.
Cool. Well, I've got one more question.
Okay.
And we'll wrap it up. So what's the next big thing for you? Is there a big adventure planned, or are you settling down? You're done? Like that was.
Well, I think Beth and I've talked about this. Definitely done with long distance hiking for the most part. Now there is a trail. It's called the Foothills Trail. It's on the North Carolina South Carolina border, about 3 hours from where we live, and I'm planning to do that. It's only 75 miles, so that's only a week or less, depending on what shape I'm in.
Yeah.
But, we live close to the AT throughout Tennessee, North Carolina, and up even into southern Virginia. We are within a couple or 3 hours of the trail. And one of the cool things when you're hiking is to come down into a road crossing and you see somebody set up with a gas grill and a cooler, and they're feeding hikers. They call it trail magic.
Wow. Okay.
And that
is magic.
I'm actually going out next week. I've got some folks that I'm following on YouTube this year that I have been dying to meet, and I've been in contact with some of them. And I'm going to try to go out and at least a couple of them I've been in close contact, and they know I'm coming, and they're going to let me know where they're going to be. So that's sometime first of the week I got to sort of figure out that math and say, well, I know they're here, so in 2 days they should be. We'll set up at that road crossing. So I'll go out and do a 3 or 4 day hiker feed. And I'm hoping to do that a few times during the spring. That's also in the giving back, because the people that do Trail Magic, they don't expect any money from the hikers. They're doing that because they were hikers or maybe they're just section hikers, or they just enjoy helping other people. There's church groups that do this, and it's just a way to give back to that community, which has been so important to me.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I've got one thing to share before we close, and it's more of just a recommendation.
Okay.
I love to go camping. I don't camp enough, but when I get the opportunity, I'm not too busy. I love to go camping, so I want to give a recommendation of what I feel like is not one of the, if not the best place to go camping, just based off of the view, location, things to do, all that stuff. So in the Linville Falls area, I think it's Old 105 is the road.
Probably so.
I like to go early. There's a spot. I have the coordinates if anyone's ever interested, and I may just put that on the in the comments below for anybody that's interested. There's one spot. You have to go early, and normally you have to go during the week. If you go the weekend and it's decent weather, it's probably going to be occupied. But there's just set up dropout camps, like primitive camping.
Right.
And this is about half a mile past Wiseman's View.
Okay.
And it's overlooking you can see Chimney Rock.
Okay.
It's just an absolutely incredible view. In fact, I might even provide a picture of it while I'm saying this right now. But you can go hiking. You can hike down to the falls. I mean, it's child's play compared to the hikes that you've done.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you want to do a real small hike, if you've got a 5 or 6 year old that can handle this, and go hike down to the falls, and then go and camp and look over the gorge and that night, and it will be awesome. I highly recommend it. Yeah, I can get you I have the exact coordinates of where this campsite is.
Okay.
And you can stop there. You can actually hike from your site all the way down and go into the falls. And it's about I want to say it's about it's like a 15-mile, maybe. No, it's not that much. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just guessing right now. But it's not an easy hike. But, from your site, if you drive to it, there's a little drop. It's like 2 miles to get there if you stop. But I highly, highly recommend it. I love to go camping, and I want to get more into hiking. And I mean, what an admirable story! I'm super impressed with your accomplishment and everything else. And I really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you asking me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Nice to see you again.
Yep. All right.
Thanks so much.